You're listening to Your Rivers Are Wrong, the podcast.
Hey Merlo, if I say going Dutch, what does that mean to you?
That's like a payment thing, no?
Yeah.
Splitting costs? Yeah. I mean, yes, we do that all the time.
Is that a term used? Is that a term used in Holland? Because
No, it's just splitting the
it's
cost.
not. Because I have to say, there's no such thing as like going American. What if going American is like, I'm sure, means something terrible.
No, but this is like an old school thing, right? Like if you go to like a Roman country, I don't know, Italy or something, they hate it when you do this because the whole idea of like being a gentleman or being like a man in general is paying for somebody else's stuff. So going Dutch is not a thing, and we don't care because we're like greedy like that. Unfortunately, the stereotype is true. So, I mean. And also, we talked about the tipping thing, right? I mean, I also usually don't tip because they're not like dependent on tips at all.
Fair.
And I just forget it exists. So I'm always going to be the rude person in anywhere else but here because I just forget that it exists.
Well, tipping is a thing in America because people who work in hospitality don't get paid enough.
Yeah, like the wages suck or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't get paid enough.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I didn't see you there. Hi.
This is the start of it?
This is the Your Rivers Are Wrong podcast.
Oh
Good morning. Good evening or afternoon. Whenever you may be, welcome back to our world building and storytelling podcast, where we talk about the wonderful whimsies of world building, the arts and aesthetics of setting up a setting and telling stories born from it. My name is Dante, and I'm one of your hosts for today.
And I'm the other host, and my name is Merle.
And I just wanted to try a cold open just this one time. Just this one time.
You know, changing it up. Yeah. Switching gears here. I'm all for it, you know?
And I've been thinking about that question all week. And I wanted to ask you earlier in the week, but I thought it'd be way funnier if I just asked you on podcast.
I love how that's part of the podcast now, that I just say, wow, all Dutch people are greedy. Because it's true.
I'm sorry. It makes sense. It makes sense.
I mean, who am I kidding?
Listen, I have my opinions on the dance of, I'll pay for it. No, I'll pay for it. No,
well,
but I insist
share the
I'll pay
opinions
for
then.
it.
Like, please elaborate.
I'm not a fan. I feel like splitting it should be the default. I feel like that's just manners to offer, because usually in an American guy-girl date, it's like the guy has to offer to pay. That's just how it is. And then the girl has to like politely refuse. And then the guy has to be like, okay, we can split it, and or insist more. And it's like this little dance, and everybody knows that the dance doesn't have to happen, that we could just split it normally. But manners indicate we should. But
manners. Those goddamn manners.
I hate manners.
Who likes them anyway?
Manners, who needs them? Anyway, let's get caught up on what the heck we've been up to this past week before we jump into what we usually deal with, which is a topic related to world building or storytelling brought to the table by one of us, the transatlantic table that we have because we live 6 hours apart.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking across the ocean over our fancy tin cans and wire that we used to record this podcast, extending all the way across the full 6-8 hours.
Amazing. We're so off the rails. We barely started.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know, I like it. Let's spice it up. This is great.
This is how we always... How's your week been?
Despite what this might sound like, my week's been amazingly steady and like in a good rhythm, which is great.
Wonderful.
I slept early. I cooked well for myself, which is all like nice adult things to do for yourself. It's good self-care stuff. And also, I'm cat sitting for my neighbor and good friend, and she has cats and like a large living room that I love and a TV that I can use. All of which I don't possess in my usual day-to-day life. So it's
all
great.
The great things.
Yeah.
What more could you ask for?
It's great for, freelancing. It's great for just being in a kitchen that you don't have to share with other people. It's great. It's the good stuff. Good vibes all around.
Oh, that's so good.
How about you?
I'm doing well. On a comment on that, the first meme ever made about our podcast was somebody on Twitter who I don't know if you know them. I don't know if you know them.
I didn't recognize, I think.
Got it. It's someone who comments that we don't sleep well or we have bad sleeping habits. And I'm like, I have no idea where you're coming from, what episode you just watched.
Fake news.
But clearly we say this too much.
Yes.
Clearly we say this too much.
It's true. So here's me turning over the newest leaf. Hear me out. There will never be more fan art about our terrible sleeping tips, even though it's probably true. I'm improving, looking upward. This is a new beginning to me.
Oh no. You don't know what we're like when we're well rested. Totally different people.
Apparently much more chaotic.
Huge tonal shift. Well, listen, I just woke up. A consequence of the time zones, as we talk about every episode. It's just barely 6 a.m. where I'm at. It's noon where Marilla's at. And that works out because, scheduling and stuff. This is the best time for both of us.
Yep, somehow this works.
Somehow it works. For my week, which was very exciting, my sister won lottery tickets to Broadway. She's big on entering the lotteries to get tickets to shows that have reserve a couple of seats on the side or in inconvenient spots to buy at a discount.
So this is an American thing, right? I've heard of this from Hamilton, but I don't really know what the deal is or how it works. Do you just give your email address and enter a sort of pool?
Yeah, exactly that. There's a website specifically for certain shows where they say they have 200 seats and 20 of them are not in the best spots. They'll put those up for lottery. You enter your name in at 10 a.m. and by 2 p.m. you'll know if you won or not.
Oh.
They'll just pick a name from the hat, basically.
That's fun.
And then you have 1 hour to be yes, I'm going. And then you get the tickets and you're going that night. So
I love that. That's great.
She's won a great number of Broadway tickets. She's won Hamilton, which is the prize ticket.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. I mean, yeah.
There's a point where she's like, should I try to enter this one again? I've already watched this one. It's just
that's such a luxury problem. I hate that. I mean, good for her, but I hate it.
But I got to watch the Broadway show 6, which was wonderful. It was so, so good. It was a pop reimagining of the 6 wives of King Henry. And it was so, so fun because they were all so, so talented.
I think I saw a Tiny Desk performance about this. I think they were on Tiny Desk. And then I was like, wow, this is great. And I literally forgot about it.
Yeah, there was so much energy. But yeah, that was my big thing for the week.
Fun. Very nice.
In these situations, we can't plan for these. So basically, my younger sister and I will be working on something and we'll just get a random text from my sister and be like, hey, I won tickets. Do you want to go? First one to say yes goes.
3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah. So whoever's free, we say yes.
Yeah.
Pay a little bit for the ticket and we go. And it's very fun. It's a nice outing. That was my big highlight.
Amazing.
Oh, also, I have to say this because people in the TTRPG sphere will understand this. I got to live stream last night with Jay Dragon, who is one of the writers and creators of Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, not new, I guess, because it released this year, a new TTRPG. And we were talking about where we learned, what the inspirations of our learnings of how to game design. And he very casually said, so yeah, a while ago I was talking to Brennan and figuring out what should I do about this game. And I'm like, oh, just casually name drop the Brennan Lee Mulligan as just wild. Brennan. Yeah, no big deal. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was in the presence of a celebrity.
On the other side. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I fully dissociated. I'm like, I can't believe you can do that.
Yeah.
But apparently they know each other through the camps that they've went to, through LARPing and improv and all that. And it's wonderful.
So did you secure a Brennan Lee Mulligan interview? This is where this is leading, obviously, no? Put in a good word.
Who knows? One day.
Not tomorrow, isn't this a thing where you can reach anyone in 6 steps? This is 1 step.
Oh,
dude.
the 6 degrees.
There's so much potential here.
6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll work on it. I'll get there. This is the long-term goal. Listen, I got of the 99 TTRPGs I've pledged myself to cover, I'm on 13. So I have 86 more tries.
You got some time. Yeah, that's true. This is a long-term plan. I can visualize this.
Yeah, I see the vision. Anyway, anything else before we jump into this episode?
Nope.
Okay, wonderful. This was going to very loosely tangentially tie into I was going to make Going Dutch a whole thing that leads into the topic, but it doesn't work. It doesn't really work. So I'm just going to go into the topic and we'll go for it.
I can't believe that part was planned.
You tell,
because that was
I planned it
chaos.
5 days ago and I've been holding on to it for 5 days trying to do the exact
that's dedication. I'll
behind
give you
the
that.
scenes. This is not a spontaneous podcast. Every word is planned. Let it be known. I don't improvise anything.
Nope. You heard it here first.
This is the most practical way to do podcasts, to make sure every single word is outlined and drafted and rewritten and revised.
That's the most efficient and fast way. Yes.
Professionals work.
Obviously.
Anyway, this is the topic for today. Again, I bring the topic to the table. Marla doesn't know what it is. I have my notes on it. She's going off the cuff. This is just kind of how it works, and we alternate every episode. So today, we're going to talk about something that we kind of touched on in a couple episodes. You've seen the episode Villains. You've seen the episode Lancers.
Seen.
Today we're going to talk. Today we're going to talk about foils. We're going to talk about foils between characters. What is a foil? How to utilize a foil, and perhaps how to play a foil. You're familiar with this term, I'm sure. What does this word mean to you? Before I jump into this,
I feel like it's either that I'm not a native English person or that I just have a very vague, confusing understanding of this word, but I don't really know what it means. It's either something like beef between characters, or it's just like a relationship. I'm not sure if I'm in the right corner here.
Those could both be, those are both aspects of foils, which is wonderful.
Okay, so please elaborate on this.
So, a foil, if I'm understanding the origins of this word correctly, a foil is quite literally like aluminum foil or some sort of metal that you put on the side or under a diamond or gemstone to accent or highlight the beauty or the form of the gemstone itself. So its goal is to make the gem look better or shine brighter. In literature, a foil is something put in direct contrast to a character to make that character's traits more vivid. So
right.
The most common character foils are, of course, villains or antagonists that are diametrically opposed to the main character's beliefs. By putting somebody on the other side of the table, you can highlight what makes your main character so unique.
Right.
Foils also exist as lancers, as we've talked about, the kind of second-in-command characters who have a different viewpoint on how to move forward. They can both be good guys and still have differing opinions. Very much Goku Vegeta energy, where they both want to save the world, but one is much more lighthearted than the other and would take very different approaches if given the choice. So today, I wanted to highlight exactly that. I kind of just summarized what foils are, but there's a bit more to dwell on, I suppose.
I mean, it helps. Yeah, this is great.
Specifically, I want to talk about today what it takes to be a foil or play a foil. And how can you do that in a more active sense rather than in a novel type, already written down, already predetermined sense? The active activity of adding contrast to character dynamics, I guess, would be the full title of this episode.
Yes.
If it wasn't so long, like that's not nearly as catchy as just putting up foil and like leaving it. There's an aesthetic art. There's an art to making titles for these things, and sometimes you got to summarize it in one word, and sometimes more words sound better.
Of course, yes.
Which is actually really interesting. I'm just going to talk about this for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, I was going to say, make it an episode.
The podcast episode titles are different on Spotify and our streaming platforms than on YouTube, because YouTube doesn't like single word titles because they're just not interesting. There's a very heavy focus on making titles like clickbait or something clickable. So if you have a podcast episode, which is much more direct, it's like villains. We could sometimes our episodes are just number villains and something else. But on YouTube, the video is probably titled some sort of how to make your evil people even worse,
For sure. Yeah.
Something like
it's basically
that.
a sentence,
Some sort of energy.
Preferably without punctuation, and you're good.
Yeah. Podcast titles do very badly on YouTube. Anyway, total tangent. Coming back. This came to mind very specifically because we just recently concluded a game where we each played one character in a 2-character story. And a number of the prompts that we had to address in this game that would help define how our characters move forward or how we address the world, a lot of them made sure to put us on opposite sides of the table, or made sure to say that, hey, you're going to make a decision and this is going to disagree with someone. How does this play out? And one of the biggest catalysts to character growth is making sure there's something to stand against, making sure that there is something to put in the backdrop of you that highlights what you are in opposition to that, if that makes any sense. A lot of characters, when put into a white room, will use their backstory, a backstory that highlights the person they used to be, what they've gone through, and that allows their current self, their current personality and decisions and ideals to shine through. But there's a very interesting way of framing 2 characters against each other as they're both dynamic forces and changing forces, and giving them the opportunity to influence each other. That makes that dynamic so interesting and is what makes foil such a good literary tool, because it puts their unique ideals against each other in a way that allows both of them to shine.
So is this term specifically like a person, or can it also be just, context or a building or, I don't know, a language?
Of course, it could be any of those things,
Okay, yeah, so it's not specifically
not specifically for characters.
in the world of characters, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. Foils are often used just for architecture. You have a really small, dingy building next to a new, shining building. That's a foil.
Yeah, right.
But most often it's used for characters and such. As an example, and I guess I'll ask you for examples of characters you feel are proper foils. The thing that comes to mind most notably is Batman and Superman. Batman and Superman are not enemies, but they're not the closest of friends, so to speak. They're just like coworkers in many aspects.
Yeah.
But the way they see the world is very different. Superman is very bright and optimistic and hopeful about things, and Batman has the cynicism that he carries with him, where everything has to be second guessed and thoroughly checked, and to make sure it could be trustworthy. And basically, whenever they work together, they always have different decisions on how they want to tackle a problem. They always have different approaches to it. And it's from their backstory, from how they grew up, that forged their ideals. And the ability to show two directions a story could take, and then ultimately choosing one or a mix of the two, is what makes watching both of them on the same screen so interesting. You never really know what you're going to get. Whereas if you have Superman and Superman 2, which is like exactly the same person, that's not nearly as interesting. He's like, let's go beat this bad guy. Sure. How do you want to do it? Oh, fly in and beat them up? Yeah, sure.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Oh, you're so insane. That gets so tiring. That would get so tiring.
Yeah, for sure. I immediately had to think of a bunch of cartoons. And I think it usually has to do with like two main characters that are super different from each other, but still sort of hanging out all the time. Like Gravity Falls, Dipper and Mabel. I don't know if you've seen it. It's really great. But basically, in that show, it's very much sibling energy. Mabel is so fundamentally different from Dipper. Dipper is basically like the rational voice, constantly worried about his appearance and about if things are going right and if no one's getting harmed and stuff. And Mabel is like a complete glitter bomb that's totally happy, but also increasingly chaotic, confusing to be around because she has no plan, like, ever.
Right.
But the combination of them and the fact that they just keep having adventures together is basically how we constantly see the different perspectives sometimes go right and sometimes go wrong, and how they sort of bounce off each other, right? And I think that's very much what you're talking about too, like the bouncing off each other. I'm not sure if I remember this name, but there's one manga series, Girl from the Other Side, with like beautiful black and white ink drawings. And it's basically a little girl that meets either a monster or some sort of representation of death, and I don't think they can touch. They become really best friends. I found this through like art on Pinterest, where like a super kind of dangerous looking horned devilish monster is having like a picnic with a little girl, and I found it the most beautiful. It's basically on my best ghost buddies Pinterest board. And the whole point is when you have a relationship that, you know, that we keep following, but they're fundamentally different in either the way they work or the place they come from, or, you know, just in personality, then it's sparking lightning against each other. Right? That's the best combination, I think.
Yeah. I like how it's kind of like the mirror reflection is the analogy we're going with here. Because for a character to express their ideals in a way that's meaningful and impactful, there has to be somebody against it. There has to be a reason to say it, to say it out loud, what you stand for. And the best way to do that is just to put somebody on the other side and say, hey, you're wrong. This is how you do it. And you say, no, this is how you do it. Another example that I want to bring forth about foils, which emphasizes that foils aren't necessarily like just black and white. It could be red, yellow, blue. Red, yellow, blue. Yeah. It could be red, yellow, blue, as in they could highlight different sides of the character and specifically put foils against each of those sides. The one I'm thinking of right now is Arcane, where Caitlyn and Vi are very distinctly foils to each other, as in they had very different upbringings, different ways to tackle injustice and crime, and them realizing that because of their different backstories or their different upbringings, they have been molded by the city to look a certain way, to think a certain way, and to act a certain way. And it's only by meeting each other that they realize, hey, we can approach this in a different direction. Now, another foil in this is Vi against Jinx, where it's both of them with technically the same backstory, but they just handled it in different ways. Vi was forced to become very tough, very rugged, very strong to kind of weather these kind of things. Whereas Jinx fell full force into the chaos of where they grew up, into the deterioration and the decay that comes into one's mind when they're surrounded by these influences all the time. And if we put Vi in the center for a second, that is two different foils on two different sides of Vi, where she has similarities to both of them, but these differences are what makes them so interesting. It's that she's
Yeah.
forced to decide which side she would like to take, what she favors more. And that changes her. The growth of the character is realizing that there's more than one way to handle life. And the art of convincing the others of their side, of their direction, of their choices. That's foils at work. That's so interesting. And it adds such flavor to the story to put these very different people so close to each other.
This is also what we talked about in the episode about, God, I forgot, but at some point we talked about side characters and how it's really nice when people have sort of one character trait with which you as the audience can identify with, instead of like a complex main character that has a bunch of traits, or is literally a more complex character because we spend more time with them and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But this is kind of similar to what you're saying, right? The question, I guess, that I have is, can you only have a complete black and white foil in a complicated relationship? Or can you also completely oppose someone in a smaller relationship? Because you're talking about villains or antagonists or, other main characters like a sibling that's also constantly there. Do you need this amount of time to completely oppose someone? Or can you also do that in other ways?
I mean, the whole point of a cast of characters, like a party, so to speak, of a 5-man crew, where they all have their unique talents and dispositions, the whole point is that you can shine the light at so many different angles. Like in the same way that the aluminum foil allows light to bounce into the diamond in a different direction, perhaps you need to have the angry character show their gentler side. Well, what character is perfect for that? Bring that character into frame, have them be like rough and tumble and angry, and force the brutish character to teach them what it's like to handle anger. I remember there was a very funny episode of like the Avengers where everybody catches the angry Hulk syndrome, where they all turn big and green and they can't control their anger.
Oh, interesting.
And suddenly the Hulk has to be the voice of reason and be like, no, control your thoughts, keep them down. That kind of thing.
Love that. That's great.
If you think of like a cast like the Teen Titans, Robin learned something different from every character in that room. And each of those characters is necessary to teach him a certain lesson. In the same way, all of those characters are affected by everybody else. And it's like a foil is not a mirror as much as it is like, I don't even know the proper analogy for this. It's almost like a prism, like a diamond, as we were saying. It allows light to refract through a character in a different way to allow something else to shine through. All you need is the right light, the right source, the right impetus, so to speak. I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like that's what...
I'm not sure, yeah, but it's interesting nonetheless. We're kind of talking about interchanging stuff, right? I was picturing in my mind, what if the main character just sees something from afar happening that has nothing to do with them? And if they're not touched, if they don't get emotional about it in any way, anger or sadness or confusion or whatever, then I guess it's not a foil. Right? Because it's sort of supposed to be opposing, or at least triggering something, anything. So that does mean that all the foil situations that we're talking about are not standalone things, right? They're always embedded in the arc of the main character or in the character that it's about.
Right.
And I think it gets interesting when we're talking about different foils for different characters. Usually you have a main character in a story, but not all the time. Sometimes you have 2 or 3 or 4, or like a whole band of people, as you were saying. And sometimes one person can be the foil for someone else and be the best friend of character C and never opposing character C. Or they can trigger different things in different people. And that's where it gets complex and interesting too. And
also on what you touched upon, if something is happening and the character does not have a strong reaction to it, that's also an opportunity for foil, where it's like, oh, their stoicism in this moment or their lack of reaction speaks of the character. Speaks of their direction. Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah. Do you specifically think of foils as a term or as a sort of concept when world building or when creating characters or, Yes.
conflict in a story? Yeah, you do?
all the time.
Really? Wow.
I like designing characters in direct contrast to people who are already in the party. I like hearing other people's characters first and being like, okay, who can stand as far opposite to them as possible? Oh, right. Okay. Because especially in like D&D is one of those games that mostly focuses on combat. So you don't really have to, working as a team and all that. But when it comes to role play moments, there is nothing, to me, funnier than forcing a character to feel so strongly about something. And often it's like, just for an example, He's going to get an unlikely shout out. When playing with DeForest, our friend DeForest,
Oh, yeah.
he's very much quite usually a straight-laced, responsible character. He usually knows the right thing to do, the right thing to say, how to handle people.
He makes the right decisions, yeah.
So
Unlike
it is
us.
it is the funniest thing in the world to me to make the absolute wrong decision and see how they attempt to either clean up after what I do or just leave me to my devices and let the chaos fall, let the dice fall where they do. But yeah, I think one of the best things to do at a table is to look at what another character feels about strongly, one of their strongest ideals, right? And then to make a character that actively questions it. Because you're telling me that this character of yours is passionate about this thing. For me, what that says to me is, I got to make you prove it. You know, you feel so strongly about this? Fine.
Right.
I'm going to press you on it. Why do you feel this strongly about it? And it but invites them to speak more of their character, to highlight things about their character that are unique. Once you get a character talking about what they truly believe in, maybe you pull a little bit from their backstory, maybe you learn about where they came from, why they do certain things, and that makes the character feel more whole. So whenever there's a break between combats or very stressful dungeons, I'll usually try to look for a character that hasn't talked in a little bit. And I'll be like, hey, I noticed you did this. I don't like that. Why did you do that? I'm not the biggest fan of that.
Explain thyself.
Yeah, convince me that that's something worth doing or worth saying, or
Right.
why did you talk to this person this way? That's a strange thing to do. Like, I'll very explicitly antagonize them because that's the most fun way to do it. And I don't really care if my character looks dumb in the process. Playing low charisma or low wisdom characters is the best way for me to seem dumb walking into a conversation, when behind the screen, it's just a way to invite your character to start talking.
I mean, that's great. However, it also makes me instantly more curious about what your characters look like in a void, how their internal stuff's going on. I mean, that's also about foils, right? They're always sort of in relation to something else or to someone else. It's an interesting question as the main author then of something, right? If you just write a book by yourself, where is your main focus and who's the start of the comparison, basically? Do we start with a character that's super angry and needs to relax more, and then we make a second character that's the chillest in the world? Or do you do it the other way, where the Zen person has to learn to, I guess, embrace conflict, or at least, do it every once in a while? What does the difference in focus, in terms of how you set up a foil, mean to the conflict or to the foil? Because that kind of determines where you start and where you come from, or what you create in relation to it, right?
I mean, that comes down to the author, right? It comes down to what they find more interesting. Whatever story they're looking to bring out, so to speak. What is a story if not somebody being challenged? You know, what is a story if not someone having to go through conflict and address contrast? Even if it's just a solo character, the foil would be the world. The foil would be the world telling the character what you believe is not true, what you hope for is not real.
I like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Like, prove that your ideals mean something.
Or change as a character.
Yeah. It's the art of bringing to light contrast and really making sure that leads to a good story. It really depends on you, right?
Yeah, I like that phrasing. That's great. Yeah.
The most important thing to whoever's writing it. And that's it. That's all I got.
I mean, dang, yeah, I love it. That's very well said, I think. I like how we kind of end up at the core of this, right? Where storytelling is just about contrast and conflict. And that's basically what this whole topic is secretly about anyway.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's if you want to hear more, we literally have at least 3 episodes on very similar topics to this.
For sure. Yeah.
The Villains and Lancers would be my original.
This is coming back in all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Amazing. I love it.
Okay. And with that, we're going to jump to our prompt.
Okay.
Here's what I got for you. Again, this is the prompt section. Today, I'm going to toss out a prompt. Mela's going to answer it. She has not heard this prompt yet, so it'll be entirely improvised. And this is going to be pretty darn simple.
Okay.
And when I say simple, that means as complicated as you'd like it to be.
Okay, yeah.
Describe for me a villain whose foil is another villain.
Oh, okay.
Which I guess implies 3 characters, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, a villain can be the main character.
This is true.
If you want it to be. The beef can be the main character.
The beef.
I mean, okay. Let me think. This could be anything. What vibes am I am I going to do here?
Yeah, what are you in the mood for?
Okay. I like this to be a little bit complex because I think it needs it for the ethics to work out here. I would say there's a rather big city somewhere, quite remote in terms of the area. There's a beautiful, lush, vegetation around. It's a very unique climate, very rare species as well. There's a bunch of people that are just living here just for research purposes. And it's doing pretty well. Like, it started out as a small village under the leadership of, give me a good leader name.
Just gonna pull
Commodores something.
Drumgool.
Drumgool under the leadership of this Commodore. This is a hard name, man. Drumgool?
Sorry.
That's a lot of, okay.
Let's switch it. Let's make it like Murdoch or something. Make it Murdoch. How's that?
Murdoch? Okay, cool, sure. Under the very successful Blood, Sweat, and Tears leadership of Commodore Murdoch, this city research center has been thriving. This Commodore came from far. A lot of their work was convincing other people that this place was worth it, that they were supposed to be building stuff here, that they were supposed to develop and research this area because of its unique properties, etc., etc., etc. And that took years of hard work, of, hiring people, of trying to get everything there for development and for growth. And eventually, after many years, it did succeed. It starts subtle, but at some point, we kind of see a camera zoom in on one of their end-of-the-day tables full of sketches, paperwork. There's a bunch of, interesting looking photographs on one side. And we see them looking into a microscope and seeing a strange sort of black something moving under their lens. And they look a bit, startled and confused about what this is. And as we overhear him talking with their colleague, would you mind looking at this for a second? Because I thought it was supposed to be lifeless. It seems to grow and die quicker than usually. It's almost, it's almost like a virus of sorts. It's very unclear. Before we know it, some time passes and we really see the research facility having a emergency meeting because somehow something has been discovered that was not supposed to be there. This is a sort of liquid, a sort of creature. It's very unclear as well, which is scary for people that usually like understanding things. The news reaches the Commodore's ears as well. In the research document that has been handed to him, he sees and notices that the creatures that this is living in or that this is existing in are one of the most extinct in the area. If he wants to contain this, which is basically what has to happen at some point because it looks like it's growing or spreading very quickly without them knowing what it is, this might have a super intense effect on the people in the city.
Of course, yeah.
I'm not really sure where I'm going. Okay, I would say
This is gonna be super intense.
Yeah, how long have I been talking? I'm gonna say we're time skipping a little bit here. I think I'm just gonna describe this as if it's like the back of a book. This is like the shitty summary of the actual interesting story.
Fantastic.
Eventually, this conflict grows stronger and stronger. All sorts of people have opinions on this, both people from the research facility, nature activists, anything related. We keep seeing sort of shots or little scenes of this black matter or mass growing and spreading and combining things together. One little bunny in a forest nearby, we see it lose color and become a black mass itself. Another tree losing a lot of sap from it or water from the leaves, it starts trickling, and this sort of starts growing into an ever-growing creature or organism that's slowly sort of accumulating on the edge of the forest. I guess the final scene before either a big battle or something else, where the Commodore has to decide, am I antagonizing this? Am I trying to kill this no matter what? Or am I trying to understand it? We realize that the storyline is basically about...
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Okay.
This is a really big back cover.
This is the worst I've ever done. Oh my god. I was trying to go for the sort of Mononoke vibe where it's okay, on the one hand, this Commodore is super successful at being good at their job. And on the other hand, if it wants to destroy it, it's basically going to destroy nature and everything that it stands for, which is, understanding research. But you can't do that if you're just going to kill that stuff before it reaches your city, whatever that means. I just love this story to be like a story with many stakes and perspectives.
I love it.
Where no path is the right path.
All right.
That's kind of what I was going for, and it's not happening. So that's why I'm
If-
explaining it to you.
If I saw this on the back cover of a book, and I'm imagining like size 6 font, just 0 margins, just going
Yeah, you need
across-
like a minute to read this. Yeah.
just looking
This
at
is
the
like
back
one
of
of
the
those
book.
heavy books that are like trying to be
Oh, I
like
love it.
become classics and not really becoming one because no one like finishes the first 5 chapters.
There's
That's definitely what this
uniquely
is.
there's something uniquely novel about the back cover.
Oh my
Just
God.
explaining the whole plot.
I started out great, but I got so lost.
It was
halfway.
good. It was so good.
So
That's
as we
good.
said in
I
the
love that.
beginning, we're totally scripting everything that we're saying in this
is
podcast.
all planned.
Obviously, yes,
Every second is planned.
for sure.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. This is what is this? The 40-something mark? Yeah, I think right around here. It says Marilla breaks down and doesn't.
Yeah. I mean,
summarize the
sometimes
plot.
sometimes you just don't end up where you want to end up, and it gets complicated as you keep talking.
Oh
And it
gosh.
happens today.
And that's storytelling. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. Listen, if you enjoy prompts like these, if you truly do,
We
you can
usually
listen-
do better, really. Like, tune in for the next one where we actually make like a cool thing.
No, we can't all have home runs. We can't have
No.
home runs every single episode.
It's true.
Sometimes we bump, sometimes we walk.
You know, the concept was there. The execution was
Oh yeah,
questionable.
I love the vision.
Thanks.
Well-
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for tuning in. Again, if there's any topic that you're interested in, you don't have to watch any of our episodes in sequential order. It's truly just pick whatever you want to watch and watch. Pick whatever you want to listen to and listen to it. And we'll be here next week with another episode, another topic, another prompt. Look forward to
Yeah.
episode 55, where it's nothing but fan prompts. We're going to take prompts from you guys
Very exciting. Yes.
and answer them, which is going to be a blast. And as you do that, as you step into this world of imagination, as you think to yourself, how would I have handled that prompt?
Better, probably. Yes.
By all means, please think about such things. But as you do, always remember this one core foundational concept that we will eventually touch upon in a future episode.
Which is?
Your rivers are wrong.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. We got to cover that eventually, right?
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll definitely do it. Just not today.
Not today.
My creative juices are done.
Okay, we'll just refill on those real quick. We'll go grab some creative juices. I think I got some in the other room. I'll give you.
Oh, great,
I'll pass you
yeah.
some. Yeah. I'll pass it through our
Awesome.
tin can and wire. I'll just pour it in.
Amazing. Yeah, that's
Cool,
definitely
cool.
how it works.
All right,
Anyway.
goodbye, guys. See ya.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Rivers Are Wrong. If you have ideas for topics, prompts, or you just want to share your thoughts, please reach us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. That's yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. Also, a big thanks to Maarten Schellekens, who created the intro and outro music for our podcast. And most importantly, thank you for listening. We hope to see you at the next one. Bye.